Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. And today we're going to be continuing Pokemon Week, stepping into the 4th generation of Pokemon, almost 8th generation. We're already at 8th generation? The 4th generation of Pokemon, and in Generation 4 we have 5 games, one of which I don't have on hand. We have Pokemon Pearl version, Diamond, Platinum, which is a game I don't have on hand, Soul Silver, and Heart Gold. Now, 4th generation. In 4th generation, we go to a completely new region. What would that new region be? The Sinnoh region. As with all the other Pokemon games, we're in a new region with new enemies, Team Galactic. We have new gym leaders, we have a new Pokemon League, and a new champion. Probably one of the most intimidating champions we've had in Pokemon to date. In addition to that, we get new Pokemon, about 107 new Pokemon. We get about 47 new abilities and 113 new moves. However, out of all the generations up until this point, 4th gen is probably the one that delivers the least when it comes down to new features. I mean, granted, you get new Pokemon, but when it comes down to actual features, there's very little that 4th gen offers in that way. But what it does offer is big for the competitive scene of Pokemon playing. What would be those features? Well, 2 in particular. The first one is a Wi-Fi internet connection that allows you to play Pokemon and battle friends over the internet. You can also battle people from across the country and across the globe. So if you want to fight someone in Japan, or if you want to fight someone in Canada, or if you want to fight someone in the US, if you don't live in the US, then you can, playing Pokemon online via internet wireless connection. Second thing is that the moves are split from your type base to your physical and special base. For example, in Pokemon, from 3rd generation down, so 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and it really should be 2nd and 3rd because 1st has special as one stat, one ability, but generally for the first 3 generations, what your attack is, its actual typing, is based off whether it's attack or special attack. Allow me to explain. If you use a fire type move, no matter what, the special attack will affect its damage. If you're using a fighting move, no matter what, the attack will affect its damage. So, in 4th gen, they change it so that now, depending on if you're using a projectile, or range, or some kind of attack as that sort, or if you're physically making contact with the attack, is going to affect whether it be special attack or attack. Am I confusing you? Allow me to explain. For example, traditionally, all fire attacks are based off special attacks. However, in 4th gen, you can use an attack like Flamethrower, which is a projectile, and have that be based off special attack, but have Flare Blitz where you actually tackle the Pokemon, still fire move, and have it be based off attack. Another example would be if you use a Psychic Pokemon or any kind of Pokemon that has Psychic Attack. It's a projectile, so it works off a special attack. However, Zen Headbutt, which is also a Psychic move, is a physical attack, so it's going to be based off of your attack. This big split when it comes down to physical and special change the landscape of Pokemon battles, whether it's in-game or with your friends or people around the world. It added a lot more competitiveness and depth to the battle system. So, although it doesn't deliver as much as 3rd gen did, it did deliver a lot. They did change a few things here and there, like for example, Pokemon contests are different, but for the most part, 4th gen stays relatively unchanged other than those 2 major differences between 4th gen and the previous ones. Let's talk about the Pokemon. Now, out of all the generation Pokemons, 4th gens were probably the most underwhelming. I mean, Johto had its gems and it also had its crap heaps, but 4th gen, I just don't know how to feel about it. None of the Pokemon look horrible, but none of them look impressive. They're kind of just there. I mean, there are some Pokemon that look really cool, like Luxray, who looks like a Pokemon version of Vegeta. Or Gastrodon, or, let's see, Torterra. some good-looking Pokemon. But then again, you got some ugly Pokemon, whether or not they're good or not. For example, Garchomp is a badass, but he looks pretty damn ugly. I can't tell if that's a shark, a pterodactyl, a dragon, or my ass. I mean, yes, Garchomp is my ass. If I mooned you, you'd see Garchomp. No, but in all honesty, some of the Pokemon they were underwhelming. You didn't know what to feel about them. The cosmetic look of the Pokemon really wasn't that great, but it really wasn't that bad. They were kind of just there. And although second gen probably had some worse Pokemon, they had a lot of good gems in there. So fourth gen is actually my least favorite Pokemon set when it comes down to actual looks. There's some I like, but there's some I just don't care about. Like Skyraptor, great Pokemon, but it kind of looks silly. I mean, it has like a cowlick horn thingy majiggy. I don't know. I don't care. However, in the competitive scene, 4th gen Pokemon are a mixed bag. And I'm going to also talk about the tier listing here as well as talking about the Pokemon. In 4th gen, the Pokemon are, for the most part, good. But the reason why they're so good is because they're catered and tailored towards the split. See, 4th generation's tiering is much more unbalanced than 3rd gen and below. There's several reasons to this. For example, up until this point, Pokemon from 3rd gen and below really were established on the standard attacking method. You know, Fire-type moves, Psychic-type moves, Dragon, Water-type moves are special attack based, while Fighting moves and Rock moves and Ground moves and Normal moves and so on and so forth are attack based. The Switch helped a lot of Pokemon, but at the same time, it hurt a lot of Pokemon too. In addition to that, new moves were introduced that hurt Pokemon in general. The bane of my existence is Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock really took a lot of Pokemon that I love out of the running of playing in the competitive game scene, because really, who's not going to use an area effect like Stealth Rock? There's no disadvantage of having it, and it really cripples a lot of Pokemon that were, on a whole, good in the previous gens. For example, let's take Zapdos. Zapdos was in the borderline, almost uber category in 3rd gen. However, it's been pushed down to the overuse category because it has a electric and flying type, so it has a ×4 weakness against Stealth Rock. It loses half its health when it comes into play. Charizard is another example. Charizard was in the overuse category back in 3rd gen. A very well used Pokemon that was very reliable. However, because he has a ×4 weakness to Stealth Rock, he is pushed down into the never used category, or into the borderline between never used and overused. It's sad, because, and you know what even hurts it more is you have Pokemon in there that are catered towards this generation, like Infernape, who just work out a little bit better. If you look at Charizard and Infernape, and I don't want to talk about Charizard too much because he is my favorite Pokemon, but if you look at Charizard and Infernape, on paper Charizard's a better Pokemon. They have almost the same base stats. However, Charizard has less weaknesses than Infernape. Infernape is more of a glass cannon, you know, with close combat lowering his defenses and Flare Blitz basically destroying his health. However, Infernape does not have that ×4 weakness to Stealth Rock, and his moveset is more catered towards that split. So, Infernape is the more logical choice from 4th gen on when choosing a non-uber fire type. And sadly, despite the fact that Charizard on paper is a better Pokemon, moves like Stealth Rock in the split hurts him. There's a lot of other Pokemon that get hurt throughout the generation and the split, and also moves like Stealth Rock. And it makes it sound like that I'm really complaining about Stealth Rock, but it really is a move that hurt the tier listing. So it's kind of a mixed bag with these Pokemon. Some of them are really good. You got a lot of gems in there like Garchomp and Spiritomb. But then again, you also have the unbalancedness when it comes down to tearing for the Pokemon. In addition to that, there was way too legendaries for my blood. So I wasn't too impressed by the Pokemon that were involved here, and I wasn't too impressed on how things were handled from the transition from Generation 3 into Generation 4. On to the Sinnoh region. Sinnoh region is probably one of the smaller regions, in my opinion, and it's also probably one of the least impressive ones. There's not much to see there. I mean, the only few places that I really like, the snow area, that's cool. But, I mean, it just kind of looks bland. It looks like rehashing from all the previous areas. 3rd gen, we had some cool looking different areas. The 2nd gen, we had some cool different looking areas. But in 4th gen, it just looks like they took a bunch of different areas from the previous generations, sewed it all together, put some ketchup and mustard on it, and said, here you go, Sinnoh region. When it comes down to overall gameplay for the actual Pokemon game, while Team Galactic was kind of a boring team to fight against, I have to say that the Pokemon League and the champion in this game was surprisingly fun and very challenging. The great thing I like about this Pokemon League is that they had Pokemon of a specific type, but they would have Pokemon completely outside that type that had moves for that type that would throw you off. And Cynthia is just a badass. She has an incredible lineup and is just absolutely devastating. Probably the strongest champion, pound for pound, outside of maybe Lance from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And the other thing that this generation does have going for it is Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which are immense improvements over the 2nd gen games. And I have to say some of my favorite Pokemon games, just because they took what I loved about 2nd gen, kept it, and what I hated about 2nd gen, and fixed up. Looked beautiful, great gameplay, and a lot of content. Which is funny because the remakes have a great amount of content in them, but the cores of the game generation, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, feel as though they were kind of just rushed. They didn't quite have as much content as the other games. So, the remakes, the re-releases, good. On the whole, how do I feel about 4th gen? A lot of people are going to hate me when I say this, but 4th gen is actually my least favorite generation. It hurt me because a lot of the Pokemon I love to play are now absolutely useless in any competitive scene. And it's even worse because it's just like 1 or 2 moves that do that. Stealth Rock! That move should never have been made. It really did hurt a lot of the Pokemon I enjoy using that were either fire, flying, electric, or a combination of the 3. Among other types too. Those aren't the only ones, but Stealth Rock really limited what you could do when you were trying to make a Pokemon team. I was very underwhelmed by the area of Sinnoh and also by the Pokemon that were introduced here. However, there is a silver lining, a shining hope for 4th gen, and that was in its remakes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now, when I say 4th gen is my least favorite generation of all, that doesn't mean there isn't stuff that I like from it. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are some of my favorite games. While I don't like them quite as much as Ruby, Sapphire, Leaf Green, and Fire Red, they are still really fun games. And if I was to recommend a 4th gen game to someone, I would definitely recommend these. Heart Gold being my favorite of the remakes, although it really doesn't matter. There's just a few differences between the two. So if there is a silver lining in 4th gen, it is that, you know, the special and physical switch, although it did hurt a few Pokemon, was kind of a good idea. It was a good idea, and I commemorate them for that. And the re-releases of Gold and Silver and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, great. But everything else from 4th gen just didn't work out in my favor, and I think a lot of other people's favors. Out of my whole entire friend group, there's only one person that loved 4th gen. But then again, they don't have any loyalties to any Pokemon in general. I know that sounds silly, but for example, I have this Pokemon that I just love using. They're my favorites, they look cool, they are cool, I enjoy playing them. However, this friend, he said, well, if this Pokemon turns out to be crappy later on, I just won't use him and use another one. Which I guess is fine if you want to be competitive. But, I mean, a longtime fan of this franchise, you're going to grow attached to that Zubat. Or whatever. Let's just say your favorite Pokemon is Dragonite. Dragonite is nowhere as good as he was back in the day. Why? You have Salamence and, well, he just didn't get any improvements. But some people just don't give a shit, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But 4th gen, to me, just didn't work out. There were a lot good about it, but there was just as much bad. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. We'll see if there can be a recovery in the current generation, 5th gen, with Pokemon Black and White. But that's a different story for a different time. Tomorrow. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.